Alright, dip him. And stasis if you did. Oh my god, it stacks. Oh my god, dude. What the fuck? My like third one hit like 100 and some thousand, dude.
What's going on, Guardians? It's Tizzle here. So this video was originally going to be about how to delete champions in Grandmaster Nightfalls, but as I was gathering data for that video, I stumbled onto some pretty insane damage stacking. So now, we are going to be breaking all that down for you in great detail. But before I do that, I want to talk about the original idea for this video. If you are a fan of the channel, you will know I am a big fan of Eriana's Vow and Lucky Pants. The combination absolutely shreds. So when Exodus Crash came around as the GM this week, I wanted to prove it was viable in endgame content. So I took my trusty exotic combination into the Nightfall and had my buddy Pat run Divinity, and we tore through some champions. That is the footage you are seeing in the background right now. For this to work, all we were using was my Eriana's Vow and Lucky Pants combo paired with Divinity. This works amazingly because Lucky Pants when paired with a solar subclass will make Eriana's Vow damage ramp up 30% per shot for about 7 shots if you do it properly. This means your 7th shot will be hitting for over 200% more damage. That is massive damage, especially from a special weapon. And because it intrinsically has anti-barrier built in, it is great for Grandmasters with barrier champions, especially this season when there is only anti-barrier auto rifle. The reason it pairs so well with Divinity is pretty obvious. For starters, you get a 30% debuff, but the bigger reason is the perk on Eriana's Vow called Death at First Glance. This perk states that you get bonus damage when aiming down sights on the opening shot of an attack. This bonus is preserved if the shot deals precision damage or strikes an elemental shield. Well, the bubble that Divinity makes is quite large, so hitting crits to keep this perk active becomes much easier. Another thing I want to mention is this team loadout is wonderful in Exodus Crash and Devil's Lair because they have barrier champions and overloads, and Divinity intrinsically can stun overload champions. As I said at the top, the original point of this video was to show how synergistic this team build is. But now, let's get into the good stuff. I'm going to break down all the buffs that we can use to make Eriana's Vow hit for 175,000 DPS. This makes it hit for more than 900% more damage in a single shot. So let's get to breaking down the numbers. One thing to note is that in all these examples we are wearing Lucky Pants, so the damage will be ramping up. The other thing to note is that all calculations will be based on 7 total shots, because that is the max number of shots you can get off before losing the damage buff from Lucky Pants. If you are really quick you can get 8, but you have to be perfect. With that out of the way, let us first set a baseline. Without Lucky Pants, your Eriana's DPS without First Glance is 27,392, and the total damage in 7 shots is 110,474. And with First Glance on the whole time, you will go to 36,824 DPS and 146,335 total damage. With that out of the way, the first numbers we'll break down are shots with no death at first glance. We only hit for 15,782 damage on the first shot, and it ramps up from there. With basic math, we can extrapolate the rest of the numbers, which are on the screen now. This amounts to a total of 209,901 damage, and it takes us 4.033 seconds to shoot off these shots, so our optimal DPS is 52,046, so almost double just thanks to Lucky Pants. Next, we'll look at the First Glance buff. For this one, we hit for 20,517 damage on the first shot and ramp up from there. Therefore, we see that First Glance is a 32.5% damage buff. It hits for a total of 278,031 damage and has a DPS of 68,939. Now, we will add Divinity. This is a 30% debuff, taking our total damage to 361,444 with a DPS of 89,621. This is the damage you can be getting on all champions in a GM Nightfall every time, so long as you and your div user are on the same page. And if you happen to miss a shot and lose First Glance, here are those damage numbers. You hit for 272,874 total damage and 67,660 DPS, which is still probably enough to take out a champion and a Grandmaster in just one stun. So now we are getting to the good stuff. Where are these other damage buffs coming from? Well, when my teammates and I ran the GM this week, we had me on Hunter and they were both on Well of Radiance Phoenix Protocol Warlocks, meaning we were in a Well of Radiance a lot of the time. Well of Radiance gives a 25% buff to damage, so now we'll be hitting for 451,800 damage and 112,025 DPS. This is more than enough to tear through champions. and even if you don't have the Lucky Pants buff because it is on cooldown, between the Well damage buff and the Divinity debuff, this was usually still enough to take out the champions. So this is what I was originally going to showcase in the video, these exact debuffs and buffs stacking together. But then I got doing damage testing and decided to stack on a few more buffs. So the first one we will be doing is Focusing Lens. This is a 25% damage buff, and this one is actually quite attainable in a GM also, as many times someone is on a Shadebinder Warlock with a stasis turret. Focusing Lens states that your light abilities do bonus damage to combatants affected by stasis. However, Focusing Lens works on weapon damage if you are in a Well of Radiance. This combination hits for 564,750 total damage and 140,032 DPS. The other buff that I knew stacks with other buffs is Font of Might from picking up an elemental well. So here I create a well with melee Wellmaker and then proceed to hit for 25% more damage. This is the exact same damage as we had when we were in a well, but this actually stacks with the damage bonus that we get from a Well of Radiance. So then for the final test, we attach all the buffs and debuffs into one, which was a clip you saw at the start of the video. If we didn't take the boss down so quickly, and we actually were able to get in 7 shots, we would hit for a total of 705,935 damage and 175,040 DPS. That is over 600% more DPS than we hit with a base Eriana's Vow without First Glance. There is one more buff that does stack, and that is Power of Rasputin, which can give 10% more damage, but we did not go with that here. So now, if you were curious like I was, here are all the damage breakdowns. We get a 32.5% damage bonus from First Glance on Eriana's Vow, a 25% damage bonus from Well of Radiance, 25% more from Font of Might, and 25% more again from Focusing Lens. And then we have a 30% debuff from Divinity. That alone is 3.36x from the damage buffs and debuffs. And keep in mind, these also work with Particle Deconstruction, plus Particle stacks with Div, so you would actually get a 4.71x damage multiplier if you are using fusion rifles. But what makes this one even stronger than that is the damage buff from Lucky Pants. It ramps up 30% damage per shot, so on the 7th shot you are doing 2.8 times more damage. With all the buffs and debuffs, your 7th shot would hit for 148,618 damage, whereas with none of the buffs or debuffs, a base Eriana shot without First Glance is hitting for 15,782 damage, meaning we have 9.4 times more damage on that final shot. Over the course of the 7 shots, this is a 6.39x damage multiplier. With no First Glance, your damage was 110,474 for a DPS of 27,392, and with all the buffs, it is 705,935 damage and 175,040 DPS. And if we take the numbers with First Glance, which is pretty typical to get, then that damage multiplier is 4.82x, which is still insanely high. I just thought all this data was very interesting, so I wanted to share it with you. If you found this video helpful, then a like would be greatly appreciated. And if you want to see more content like this, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss any future uploads. Comment down below if you would like to see me do a breakdown like this with fusion rifles with particle deconstruction. I'm going on a holiday soon, so I might not get it out for a while, but if there is enough interest, then I may try and squeeze it in before I leave. I want to give a huge shout out to Pat, Baker, Yeet, and Tip for helping me to capture all this footage. I couldn't have done it without you guys. I always appreciate your guys' help and support when I do a video like this. And seriously, you guys should definitely try this build out in Grandmasters. It is super fun and effective. I can't wait to give it a try in Devil's Lair when it comes around. And I will definitely be running this loadout in Proving Grounds as well. I just probably won't have a Divinity on the team as there are no Overload champions. If you made it this far, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it a lot. Take care, Guardians.